is now 6 o'clock. It is now 6 o'clock. We are recording this meeting. My name is Sarah Dallas. I am the director of the Southern Adirondack Library System. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here to learn about cyber insurance. We are very, very fortunate that we have Kevin O'Brien from the Upstate Agency and Eric Leibowitz from the Professional Risk Solution to help us navigate and understand cyber insurance and why it's important for public libraries. The way we envision this is that there'll be about 30 minutes of presentation, and then we'll have 20 to 30 minutes for questions. What I am suggesting, because of the size of the number or the size of the room, how many people are here, if you have questions, to please put it into the chat so that we can have our presenters answer the questions. I also want to thank Michelle Largito, who was very, very helpful in pulling this presentation together. Again, thank you. This is going to be recorded so that everybody can view it. And if you have questions, please put it in the chat and we'll be monitoring the chat. If we run out of time and we don't have enough time to answer all the questions, we'll ask Kevin and Eric to answer the questions, and we'll share the answers with everybody who is in attendance. And without further ado, I pass the microphone on to Eric and Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Kevin O'Brien with Upstate Agency, as Sarah said, and very fortunate and happy to be on this Zoom call. And just wanted to, again, the whole point, as Sarah said, is to educate everybody on the wonderful world of cyber, and what that really talks about, again, or addresses, is the constant hacking that we all read about, hear about on the news, see it in the literatures. And, you know, because again, we all have, you know, personal information that's on our desktops, our computers, our handheld devices. We just have to be a little bit more careful to prevent hackers from getting into our databases. So that's really what Eric and I are here to talk about tonight. Sarah said, you know, educational. Make sure you jot down your questions so we can address them. But, you know, right off the bat, understanding sales and Mohawk Valley Library, you guys all share through the joint automation team. You're sharing electronic data, specifically patrons' information through the ILS system. You know, we need to protect that information. If you know, bad actor gets involved in there and takes somebody's date of birth, driver's license, or even email these days, as we all know, you know, email IDs are usually the first thing that people use for logging on to some website or their credit card payment. They utilize that, and then they make up their own password to get into those websites. So protecting email addresses are very important these days, almost as important as license numbers. So, you know, that data is out there. You guys are sharing it amongst, you know, all the different public libraries. So we just want to bring your attention to, you know, how we want to protect that, and making sure that, you know, one of us doesn't unfortunately have an incident where our data is removed or taken by somebody else, because again, it affects the whole, both entities all the way down, up and down the line, because again of the ILS system sharing the patron information. So hopefully we had some time to look at a couple of the handouts that I had given to Michelle. I know she passed them out in addition to this meeting, which basically, you know, the highlight is that small businesses are now in the microscope of bad actors or hackers these days. A lot of the incidents that we've had in the past have been for large companies, defense companies, corporate America, and those entities have tightened down their security measures so that the hackers are now going after, quote unquote, the lower hanging fruit. And, in my, clients I have, the number one, bullseyes that hackers are going after are municipalities, school districts, medical practices, and nonprofits. Just because, again, they do have that personal information tag that's out there, whether against the driver's license, the email ID, dates of birth, all that personal information that can be utilized to go create accounts elsewhere that people can use to make up fake accounts and grab some easy money throughout U.S. commerce and foreign commerce. So that's really what we're looking for, and looking to get everybody just to get up to speed as to how to protect their environment, and also with joint automations with their help, institute what we refer to as MFA or dual authentication or multi-factor authentication. Those are some big words there, but again, multi-factor authentication simply says that when you log into your desktop, right, you have already made up your login ID and you've made up your password, and it lets you get into your desktop and look at your icons and go from there. After that, to get into some sensitive information, we want to make a second moat or a second gate, right, to get into, and that's where multi-factor authentication comes in, where you basically hit the icon for QuickBooks or for ILS, and it's going to stop you and send you, after you type in that login, it's going to send you a 4 or 6-digit code. It could be coming through your email, coming through to your text on a cell phone, or again, it could just be what we call a token, which is a mechanical device that fits on your keychain and gives you a 4-digit device that you type into the computer. And that second authentication, again, multi-factor authentication, dual authentication, that second authentication tells the computer that you are literally Kevin O'Brien, and you can get into this gate. You can go, and look at the data. So that's the functionality of multi-factor authentication, or what some people refer to as dual authentication. Again, New York State, started rolling this out with most financial institutions about 3 years ago. In my insurance industry, we adopted it, 2.5 years ago, where, again, to get on my desktop, I need to go through two checkpoints, 2 gates, the one I make up in the morning, and then the one that my server validates who I am. And that's, again, just protecting the data, protecting that other people just can't get into, my insurance policies that I have for my clients. That's really, what I'd like to, talk about. I mean, I'll turn it over here to Eric, and he can talk a little bit more about, the policy, the coverages, what cyber, insurance, cyber liability, does for many entities, including your own public libraries.
Thanks, Kevin. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. Firstly, thanks for having me. Just to give you a little background, Professional Risk Solutions and myself, we place cyber liability and insure technology companies across the United States. We are a division, of Risk Strategies, which is the 8th largest insurance agency in the United States. We work with agents to help them place these type of risks and help them, get them, guide them through all the coverages that and all the potential situations that come up with each and every company and each every library in this case. And as you probably well know, everything's a snowflake, everything's just a little bit different. And we try to make sure that we keep this as even and it's just try to give you the right coverage. So what is cyber liability? Cyber liability basically is if you get hacked, and what happens in that scenario is that you have a policy that will pick up based upon the scenario that happens. So because everything is a little bit different. You might click on an email and tell you that, hey, you got to pay this invoice immediately, and you don't realize it's a fake email, and then all of a sudden you send $25,000 out to somebody, and it turns out that was fake. A cyber liability policy will cover that. But the main thing I think we need to talk about is the relationship between yourselves, all the libraries together, and sales in Mohawk Valley, because it's kind of you guys are in a unique situation here in which that you're separate but not. And the thing is that from the point of view of sales, they provide the technology that you guys use in order to track the books, track the people who have the books, and do book transfer between the libraries. They also provide email. But you also are kind of like the storefront. You're the store that people go into to obtain these things. So you kind of have two different systems working at the same time, and all at the same time through ILS, you're all connected. So the main fear here is, and the one thing that I think the reason why this call is put together is that to talk about this. So there's a lot of libraries out there feel like they're, look, we don't have much. We have some QuickBooks, we have a little bit of stuff, but really don't have anything else that a hacker will want. And that's actually incorrect. What happens is, remember, you have the ILS there. The ILS is really the data. And what happens is that if any library gets hacked and they get into your email, for example, and they get the passcodes for the ILS and get into the ILS and get, I think it's about 200,000 customers that are in that database. Legally, now this is something that we could talk about in a second. Legally, let's assume that you are responsible. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Polaris. Legally, you're responsible for that hack and the damages that hack caused. So even though you yourself don't really have much there, that you're talking about 200,000 people that potentially are affected by it. And the thing is, we're talking about driver's licenses. The problem with driver's licenses is that the effect of that damage won't be felt for years in the future, because what happens if you're a hacker, you have a driver's license, you create fake identities. So what happens is this person comes along and, Joe Smith, you have to notify each and every person that they're going to be, that the potential hack here, they're potentially stolen, even though it's just maybe they weren't, but maybe a 1% chance that they were. You need to notify them. So that costs money. And then what happens is that, Joe Smith finds out 3 years later that, someone's stolen their identity. Who do you think they're going to go to in order to get restitution? The library that caused the hack in the first place. So these hacks get pretty expensive. I would say in a situation like yours, if they access the system through that one library, I would say minimum $200,000 cost of the claim, minimum, probably a lot more. And that's what you're buying with a cyber insurance to protect you against that. Moreover, what you're also buying with a cyber liability policy is not just the policy itself, but it's the reaction team to help you mitigate the damages. That's really the most important thing. The policy is great. Yeah, it gives you coverage, but you got hacks. So you say to yourself, what do I do? Well, you have a cyber liability policy. You just call a number and they navigate the whole thing for you. So that's a really important space, because also you got legal requirements, you got New York State requirements, you got a lot of different things that play on here, and these reaction teams will able to help you navigate all that and get through all that, and with at least pain as possible. So that's really what you're covering here. Now, obviously, there's other stuff too. I mean, and I don't know whether or not it would work with you, deal with you guys, but there's business interruption, income loss. So if you're down for a certain period, a decent amount of time, and you're losing revenue, that you can actually put a claim in for lost revenue because of that hack. If the hack destroys your computers, it's called bricking. Basically, it turns your computer into a brick. That's why they call it bricking. That it can replace all the computers that are damaged from the hack. Also, if there's data that's lost during the ransomware event, if someone ransomwares you, because what happens in a ransomware, once they ransomware you, they're not just sitting back and waiting for their money. They're going through your system and trying to find everything they possibly they can use and sell. So what happens is they cause a lot of damage when they do that. And a lot of times you actually lose data because of it. So to try to find that data, it's a very painstaking process, and cyber liability will cover that as well. So there's a lot that comes in with this policy. There's a lot of coverage packed into it, and it's really there to basically cover from pretty much every single contingency you could possibly think of, and also have the team to be able to figure out how to get that done. So that's from my perspective why you guys need it, because of this. And I think that's basically. Kevin, anything to add to that, or anything you think I should talk about?
Yeah, no, I was thinking just one thing again, is two things that come to mind that I want to mention is, fiduciary responsibility. So, board members, again, you're volunteering to, help the community with the public library. Just remember when you step up into your role as pres or vice pres or treasurer, whatever like that, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that business, right, is running properly. And we just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Again, with the proper controls that you have in place, mainly multi-factor authentication, that definitely helps and going a long way, to make that happen. Again, the whole point is just to educate everybody as to, what we've seen come across our desk. I don't know if many of you subscribe, but every Sunday, Mr. DiNapoli, our New York State Controller, he sends out all of his audits that his team goes and follows any public money to make sure that it's being used properly. The last probably 3 years, just before COVID, he started to get on. His audits were not so much financially driven, they were just business driven, where he was looking more to find out, do the entities have the catastrophic plan, right? Do they have the book that says when there's a fire, when there's something that goes on? Does that business have the roadmap as to how to keep the business going, and number of municipalities and number of fire departments and any of those audits he does on Sundays, his auditors are going to look to find out who has the proper protocols in place to protect data, right? It's as simple as that, just trying to protect everybody's data. And sometimes he'll just write up that things are not in the right protocols, and come back 6 months later for another audit just to make sure people have gotten his advice and started putting in proper procedures and policies to make sure that things are protected, and that the New York State, the taxpayers' money is used properly. So those are really the two big things I just wanted to end on, I think depending on how far some people have with questions, we'll open that up to see, Sarah, what kind of questions are out there right now.
One of our first questions is, should Polaris implement MFA?
And this is Michelle Largento from the JA. I think that I should explain, and Kevin and Eric can tell me if this qualifies. We have MFA, or what we consider a multi-factor for Polaris, because in order to get into the software, you need the software, you need your username and password. You need to be on one of our libraries' IP in their network, because we do IP address whitelisting. They have a third feature, which is that the workstation that you're on needs to be registered in our database. So I consider that multi-factor. Maybe Eric and Kevin can tell me if it is or not. It's not a traditional multi-factor like a push or, a code. That is what is available to us now with our ILS with Polaris.
Well, in that scenario, beauty is the eye of the beholder when it comes to the carriers. I mean, it's really something in which that we have to kind of discuss with the underwriters and determine whether or not how do you feel about it. Look, the bottom line is obviously, there's a lot of companies across the United States that don't have the correct securities. And the reality is that it doesn't mean they can't get coverage. Would the coverage be limited? Would there be maybe what they call a sublimit, a little less coverage than you normally would get? Would it be more expensive? Yes, but doesn't mean you can't get coverage, and doesn't mean we can't give you full coverage all the way around. But that will be something in which that I need to discuss with the underwriters and see if we can work through it. So the answer is maybe. It all depends upon the underwriter. It depends upon, frankly, it depends on their mood. It really depends upon a lot of different things. But yeah, and someone, Katie Chambers said that not having MFA is important, and is an edict across every company across the United States to get this done and get MFA implemented for your emails and for your access to your system. But at the same time, the cyber liability market realizes that not everyone's there yet. So there is a possibility that we can get this done without MFA for now, but I would call that a Band-Aid. It is something in which that they're just trying to cater to the market right now and trying to cater to everybody that don't have it now because they realize that there are issues, but it's not going to last forever. So it's something in which that initially we can get done, and we could definitely work on that. And that's it. I'm trying to read these questions here. So
okay. Well, I will add too that we will work with Polaris, with our company, with our vendor to see if I've already got tickets into them to implement, better MFA. So we'll work with them on that as well.
That's good too. That's good too. We can
find
talk.
out what's available.
Okay.
Some of the other questions, let's see, someone said they were denied coverage because they don't have MFA on the SAL's email in Polaris. And I can also comment that we can turn on MFA for email for any library that requests it. We would really like to turn it on across the board for everyone.
And yeah, we can get you coverage. We can. It's it's not going to be, depending upon the size of the library. Obviously, we're talking price now. It's going to be obviously a lot more expensive than someone if not having MFA than having MFA. But we still get you coverage.
Michelle's iPad asks, how do we determine amount of coverage needed? Would all libraries and SALs need the same coverage? How is that determined?
Well, I mean, there's benchmarking that we can do. I know Kevin might have some information on that. Obviously the minimum premium limit that we should have is $1 million. I think that's the minimum that they should be buying. From there, depending upon the size of the library, I mean, it could be up to 5 million, in coverage if it's needed. But that's something we can determine once we receive, applications from the various libraries to see what can or can't be done and what limit that we do need.
Yeah, and just a quick point on that, again, it's the typical, return on your investment, right? So again, yes, minimally you want to have the $1 million of liability of protection for your cyber. There's sublimits underneath there for, data breach and reputational risk. Reputational risk, Erica alluded a little bit, and that's simply that when a hack does occur, right? We don't want, Kevin O'Brien, the director or the board president, to be, on Channel 13 News with Mark Mulhall and trying to explain what happened. Reputational risk inside the cyber policy brings in a third-party vendor, as Eric alluded to, that holds your hand, they're the spokesperson. They're bringing you through what the necessary steps are to, again, notify everybody, give them the 3 years of free credit reports, all that kind of good stuff. But more importantly, again, we are community oriented, so we want to protect that reputation, and therefore we bring in the professional, marketing firm that messages that properly. That's where you want to have some good limits of, again, mostly it's always $1 million, but as Eric alluded to, a lot of it goes on your assets that you want to protect. We've written $2 and $3 million limits in the past. So depending on how much that cost is, to go from 1 million to 2 million, if it's an extra $1,000, some people say, okay, that's a pretty good investment. But we can answer that one-on-one individually. As Eric alluded to, each of you are going to have unique situations that, again, one insurance policy is not going to be the same, not going to fit all your needs. We need to customize it to what each of you have.
Thank you very much. Michelle, do you want to answer Julie's questions about tight control of computers? I believe there are 3 questions she has. Do you see it?
Yes, I did see. I just asked Chris Mundell if he would reply, because I think he'll be more accurate than I will be.
Hi, everybody. Julie wants to know if type you're providing. We do provide antivirus malware. It's a cloud-based Malwarebytes Nebula software. It's on all the staff computers. The operating systems automatically update with all the patches and the antivirus because it's cloud-based. And scan USB drives on public and staff computers. The Malwarebytes will definitely handle that on the staff computers. The public computers are a little bit different. They retain absolutely no history. Anything that were to happen on that won't go between users. It maintains nothing.
And the staff computers are separated, completely
Yes.
separate networks from the public networks as well.
Yeah, the networks are segmented so that the 2 sandboxes can't meet, and the wireless is even separate from that. I think that covers it.
Eric or Kevin, what would be the typical cost for $1 million coverage for a library? And I know that this library is a smaller rural library.
I mean, typically, well, we get into what we call in the insurance business, minimum premiums. And sometimes when you're small like that, up to a certain point, you're going to all be paying the same price. So basically, we're talking probably a premium around $2,000 thereabouts, probably not including any, state taxes that are associated with the policy, any other fees that are associated. About around $2,000 is the minimum. Obviously, for larger libraries, that cost will go up, and of course, going from a $1 million limit, $2 million limit will, increase the cost as well. But I'd say about $2,000 is the minimum you'll see.
Does anybody want to answer if different libraries carry individual policies and perhaps different underwriters? Will the insurers cooperate with each other if there is a system-wide attack?
That's a really good question, actually.
Yeah.
So the plan is, if we're going to do this, I would like to try to keep all the policies with one carrier on the library side. I'd like to try to do that. I don't know if I can, but yeah, I mean, what happens is that in a situation like that, if I don't know, it's just Amsterdam Library gets hacked and affects Indian Lake Library, that yes, the carriers will work with each other. Up to them to fight out who pays what, but yeah, they will work with each other. But I think the best plan of action is try to do that. I don't know it's going to be perfect. But try to get as many libraries with the same carrier as we possibly can. I think that's the plan here, at least my plan. Kevin might have a different opinion. So,
Julie would like to ask, will cyber liability insurance fully cover cost of any liability claims or other costs incurred?
I'm not exactly understanding the question. Where it will cover anything in regards to a cyber event or cyber hack, something to do with computer systems. It will cover that. Anything else, I don't know. When you talk liability, it could be a variety of things. So, but anything to do with a cyber event and a cyber hack, the cyber liability cover will cover it.
Julie, do you want to unmute and give more background to your question? If that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we pay this money. To me, the only liability we have is if somebody does sue us, because the information on our computers, to the best of my knowledge, is book collection data, which is backed up on the sales servers, and patron information, which is also backed up on the sales servers. Not sure how they're going to determine if a patron's email gets hacked, whether it comes from an individual library or from the sales servers. But supposing an individual library does get sued, you mentioned the costs associated with, if you lose a liability lawsuit, you have to pay that. Costs associated with getting computers back online and cleaned up and all that sort of thing, and other costs. And so I was wondering, with all of the costs you mentioned associated with a potential cyber attack, does the cyber insurance cover all of those costs or just some portion?
Okay, so we're getting in the weeds a little bit. So if I get too deep, just stop me. So what happens is, obviously everyone has deductible. So what happens is it's a deductible per cyber event. So it'll be maybe $2,500 or something like that. So obviously that'll be your responsibility. Anything above and beyond that will be it will be covered by the cyber policy. Now you're talking about suing you. So we're talking about, now we're getting to something different here. So for example, for like a property, you get hit by a huge windstorm, you have damage. That's what's called a first party claim. So all the costs associated with the damage of the cyber attack that happened to you, its first party claim is called. And with that stuff is covered. So all the data restoration, all the other stuff that happens is covered. Next part is third party. Third party is someone suing you because you caused them damage. So with that, yes, if someone gets their identity stolen because of this hack, yes, they can. That policy will pick it up. But the thing is, and this is an important part of it, there's a lag time between that. So what happens is, let's say you get hacked 2022, and you get a suit in 2025 based upon that 2022 lawsuit. You need to have that cyber liability policy in place to have coverage. And what happens is that it's what they call a claims made policy. So you would need that policy to remain in place when the claim is made. So
Okay, but
that answer your question?
well, I guess I'm a little confused, because to the best of my knowledge, and Sarah or Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, the information on the individual library's computers are patron information, which does include email addresses. But because an email address is stolen, that alone, I would not think is sufficient for somebody to file any sort of liability claim, because email addresses are all over the place. And that alone is not sufficient for a scammer or somebody to do major damage. There has to be other factors coming into play with, that individual's computer usage, I would think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Really, it's up to the state of New York to determine what is going to be done. And that's the issue, is that you get the other part of this whole thing is the regulatory aspect of it, and how New York State determines what you need to do. Because what happens when a cyber hack happens, it's not for even the response team to determine what they should be doing. They got to get guidance from the state of New York determine what happens. And, state of New York is not exactly there for help you out. They're there to make sure to protect the consumer. So yeah, if your email address are stolen and there's a 1% chance that all 200,000 emails are stolen, you're gonna have to send notice out to each and every person there. And that alone can cost, I don't know, what, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And then you got the damage of the potential of the computer. And again, if they access, I'm blanking the name, Polaris through your system somehow, some way. Now that's, I'm not a tech person. I don't know how they would do it, but they get it done. That is your responsibility as well. And now you've got everything in the system there, including driver's licenses, which is the real issue.
But the Polaris is Sal's. That's not an individual library thing. And New York, has they established any regulations about this sort of thing? So we know what to expect?
Well, I think I would not 100% sure of all the regulations that this is constantly changing. But here's the thing. If Sal's is attacked and corrupts the data, that's on Sal's. But if you're attacked and they collect data for you, it's most likely going to be on you. That's the difference. So even though it's Sal's data, if they access it through your system, it legally may be yours. Now, again, that will be up to the cyber carriers to determine who's actually truly responsible. But then you get attorneys involved. Attorneys cost money too. So it's just, unfortunately, you're in this kind of group thing here in which that you're a snowflake, but you're not alone. You're surrounded by a lot of snowflakes. And that's the problem, is that you got this interrelated thing between all the other libraries and Sal's and Mohawk Valley that can exponentially increase the cost of any claim.
So does the cyber insurance
Julie?
cover lawyer costs?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Julie, we can have this discussion. I just want to get to a couple of other questions, and then we can get back to you if that's all right.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Sarah, can I just interject one thing? This is Michelle again. I just wanted to add that in addition to the data that is in the patron records, which does include date of birth on a lot of records, driver's license, email address. In addition to that, I assume every one of your libraries has local personnel data, probably electronically on a computer, plus your banking information, and that stuff needs to be protected as well. And this kind of coverage would protect you if that were compromised in some way. Somehow you got hacked and somebody got access to your bank accounts through your computers, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to point that out.
Would that cover it? I'm sorry, Sarah, for interrupting again, but in response to Michelle, our treasurer data is on a computer that's not connected to the Sal's network. So if we bought insurance, would it cover that?
Yes, yes. You have your own operating system, and Sal's has their own operating system, and yes, it would cover. Yeah, it will cover your system.
But these are private computers that people use and individuals use.
Yes, yes, it will cover that. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
you.
Julie. Those are important questions. I'm glad you were able to get them in. Ed asks, would it be advantageous for Sal's to have a policy covering all member libraries and bill individual libraries for percentage of cost?
Should I take it, Kevin?
Go for it.
I was waiting for this question, and it seems like it'd be the easiest way to do it. And frankly, if we could do it, we would want to do it that way. But the problem is that you're all individuals. You have different boards, you have different operating systems. And what Sal's is to you is your technology provider. That's what they are. So for example, QuickBooks is not your accountant. Sal's is not providing you cyber liability because they don't have the ability to, and a cyber liability policy is not structured in that way. So you would need to get your own cyber liability policy, and Sal's will actually need to get something called a technology E&O/cyber policy, which is a different animal than what you guys need to get. They get a different type of policy completely. So unfortunately, I would love to be able to do that, but we can't. It's just not going to work because you are all individually run with your own operating systems.
And one of the things, just a quick comment is, again, remember the insurance policy, which again is a legal contract. And legal contractors are looking for common ownership amongst the entities. So unfortunately, as Eric said, we had talked about it, but just no way to get that blanket, right, for everybody to fall under. So until the contract gets changed. Good question.
Good question. Very good.
And this one kind of dovetails. How do we all go with one carrier when there are policy bundles we benefit from? Seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, so just a real quick one is that the cyber policy that we're talking about, is what we refer to in the business as a standalone policy, similar to you have a standalone umbrella policy or standalone package policy. Many of you may have a Utica policies for your collections and your buildings and your equipment, all that kind of good stuff. Utica does have a slimmed down endorsement for cyber, limited to about $25,000 of coverage, but not a beefy, one in the event of a hack, as far as replying to reputational risk and other ideas that we had talked about. So these days, again, the standalone, it would be a standalone policy that would fit everybody better that way, to give, again, robust coverage and to give the coverage options that we've been talking about.
Sarah, were you asking me to take the question about how do we go about getting Sal's libraries with one carrier?
Yes, or who do you contact to? Would that be you to contact moving forward if the boards decide, if the individual boards decide to go with cyber insurance?
I believe that would be Kevin O'Brien, right, Kevin?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Kevin, do you want to put your contact information in the chat? And we will also send it out as a follow-up to this email. And Michelle, do you want to touch upon Miss Susan's phones question?
Yeah, so if we adopt MFA, is it best practice to use staff personal devices, typically mobile phones, to receive codes? If not, what are the alternatives? With our Microsoft 365, the simplest and best way to do it is with your personal cell phones. It's really the best way to identify that person is that individual person. If somebody does not have, they don't have a smartphone, or they can't, or if they don't have a phone, do a text message. We are looking into a possibility of using, I think what Kevin mentioned earlier, which is a hardware token, which is like a device that you can put on your key ring. There's a slight cost for that token, but we can do that with Microsoft 365 with our email.
Sorry about that. My dog's obviously had an opinion on what you said.
I think we've gotten to the end of the messages.
There was one question I think we missed, which I thought was a good one. Joanne asked, said, with car insurance, the buyer can do things to reduce the cost of insurance, such as the driver's safety costs. Is there anything libraries can do to reduce their costs for insurance? I have some thoughts, but I can let Kevin and Eric say.
Well, go ahead, Michelle, if you've got, go ahead.
I was going to suggest multi-factor. Have us turn on multi-factor for your email. That can certainly help. I would also say that JA has just signed a contract with a company for phishing training and security awareness training. So I do believe that is something that can help reduce the cost. I know these things because I've been helping people fill out these applications and I've been answering these questions, and we're trying to do everything we can, but I don't know if there's other things I'm not thinking of, Kevin.
Well, one thing I like to say is that reducing costs is probably, yes, there's definitely, you want to do that, but I think the whole idea is preventing claims from happening, because if you do have a claim, then your policy is gonna get a lot more expensive. So I think that's the idea behind it. Because like I said, we get to the point, especially with the smaller libraries, it doesn't matter, you have $1 revenue or maybe 500,000 in revenue, you're gonna be the same price. So it's not gonna change, but what you want to do is make sure you don't have a claim, so that $2,000 policy doesn't turn into a $10,000 policy if you do have a claim. That's the idea behind it, and that's what you wanted. I would think you would want to do.
Yeah, just to kick on that, again, Michelle did a perfect job of the know before, proactive, reaching out and probing people. Again, we've been doing that at my business for the last 2 or 3 years, where maybe once a month, technology department will just send out a fake email, right? And the know before technology, website helps you identify what's a good email, what's a bad email, and more importantly, again, generationally, this is a generational statement that I'm going to make, so don't hold it against me or whatever, and that is that there are certain generations that love to click on a link. And again, from Kevin O'Brien's mouth, the days of clicking on links are gone. No more. There's no more $1 million ticket, no lotto ticket, nothing's coming up. All those free things were, way back about 10 years ago. But again, in all seriousness, stop clicking on links. Links are the worst thing. When again, you look at the cyber losses, that's unfortunately what it is. And if some IT people are on the phone or on the call here, some of the claims that have come across my desk is simply, and again, I'll make it easy to understand, is that the back door is open and it's not locked, and that in technology world is a port. Some port is not open. So again, thumb drives, those have gone, just like clicking on links. No more thumb drives, to hold data or transfer data. Those are bad. And again, in your iPad or your Mac, whatever like that, just make sure somehow or another, and I believe Know Before helps you with this, identify what ports are open and which ones need to be closed, because again, that's how many of the hackers go in through those open ports then to get into, the device that has no security.
Any other questions? We have a few more minutes. What are the next steps?
At least from my desk standpoint, again, is I think, working with Sarah, you and Michelle to work a little bit more on the MFA and pushing that out from your system. And then, robust sharing of the Know Before, right? Let's be proactive on that. At simultaneously, by all means, anybody can reach out to myself, and between Eric and I, we can, counsel you. And most importantly, Kevin always likes to go see people. So love to come and sit and talk about your exposures and just to get to know the risks that you guys are facing. So be very open to having some, or even having Zoom meetings, which is fine.
Ed asks, should we prohibit patrons inserting thumb drives? I can answer this one. A thumb drive from a patron does never goes into a staff computer. And Chris, do you want to talk about public computers?
Sure. The staff computers, absolutely. Do not ever take a patron's thumb drive and put it in one of your staff machines. The public machines, the people who are coming in to work on those, and typically for filling out forms, Word documents, whatever, they will store things on a thumb drive because they're at the library, because they don't have any other way. The public machines are designed to handle that. There's a lot of security on the public machines. They don't, I knock on wood, I've yet to see one really get infected ever. They are really locked down. There's a lot of layers to that onion to allow them to be used by everybody who walks into the library randomly without compromising the next person. That being said, nothing is foolproof, but staff computers, absolutely not. Do not take patrons' thumb drives. Public computers, that's kind of why they're there.
In your business, Kevin and Eric, have you seen any data about how many public libraries have been hacked in real life? I know in New York State, there have been some public library systems that have been hacked. I don't even like to say that out loud. But there are cases. Baker and Taylor was hacked, which is a lot of the libraries purchase their books and materials from Baker and Taylor. But do you have any data on libraries being hacked?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Eric.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I mean, count on my fingers, a number that I'm aware of. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just Googled it, and there's one library that the website was hacked and it was directed to an adult website. And was stuck there for a while. So,
Oops.
yeah. So apparently hackers have a twisted sense of humor too. Yeah, bottom line is Boston Public Library was attacked. There's a variety of ones that happen. Yeah, St. Louis libraries got attacked as well. So there's a lot of different situations in which libraries have been attacked. And the bottom line is as things go on and as hackers look for new targets, that could change on a dime and a lot more libraries be attacked. It's all depends upon who they're targeting at the time.
These are fabulous questions. I'm so glad people are asking the questions. Sometimes I don't think of a question until like 3 days later. If people have questions, can we forward them on to you, Kevin and Eric?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, of course.
I wanted to add too, if folks are interested in getting cyber insurance and they contact Kevin, and some of you know this, JA will give you help with filling out those forms because some of those technical questions we're able to help you with. So just want folks to know that.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, those are, again, the questions are, again, some of them are techie driven, as Eric knows, and some of them are business driven, depending on the carrier. So, a number of times my clients will go to their third party tech vendor to have that data filled out and stuff. So it's normal.
Julie has a question. If we have free public Wi-Fi with a disclaimer to users, are we liable if there is a problem there?
Kevin, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah. Again, my short answer is yes, because again, I think what I've seen in the past is with hacks, whether it's Homeland Security, whoever, always tries to go back to the IP address as to how the hack occurred, right? So, I always recommend to my entities to have a password protected Wi-Fi. They're going to be dragged into it if you have an open Wi-Fi. Again, you hear all the stories of going through airports and bus terminals and Amtrak jumping on that Wi-Fi, and that's where a lot of things go wrong.
Yeah, just because you're not liable doesn't mean they can't sue you.
Correct.
We're just about short of the hour. I want to thank Eric and Kevin for taking the time to explain this to us. To me, it's a foreign language. I want to thank Michelle and Chris for their work and their knowledge and their ability to share it. And I also want to do a shout out for Erica Freudenberger for hosting the Zoom session. I always been told leaving a little bit early is always the best for a meeting, especially at dinner time. Again, thank you all for joining us today.